everybody, it's Lindsay. I'm here with Astrologer Sam Reynolds to give you all the lowdown on this lunar cycle, our Soulful Solstice cycle for the new moon in Sagittarius, full moon in Gemini. Hey, Sam.
Hey, what's going on, Lindsay?
How's it going?
It's going fine with two Scorpios in Sag world.
Yeah. What is that? What does that mean?
Every sign is the answer to the one before. Mm-hmm. And so Scorpio, the brooding intensity, I'm going deeper in my feelings. I'm going to excavate and kind of exhume what's in my psyche. And Sag is like, well, why don't you just turn on the light?
Bright light! Oh, I can't see! Don't make me come out here!
Oh. So that's Sag, bringing the light.
Bringing the light. This cycle, because of the solstice and the prep for the solstice, it has a lot to do with like how we are moving with the light of the sun and how we value the darkness. So we'll get into that in a minute. Can you give us a little bit of a lowdown on like what is the new moon in Sag awakened for us?
I think we could say that the new moon in Sag awakens possibilities. And I think this particular one is, especially the last 7 days of November, are pretty significant because it's going to be the only time frame where both the sun and Jupiter are going to be in the same sign. And Jupiter is about to make a transition out of his home sign in Sagittarius into Capricorn, which is pretty much at the start of December. In terms of Sagittarius, it's important to understand that it is a centaur shooting an arrow, shaft of light. And it is the waning light of the year before it goes into the solemnity of the darkness of the solstice, where we literally have the sun appearing to stand still for about 3 days, right? And then, so it's like the sun ebbing in its light, kind of going toward the longest night, and then we kind of come out of that. So what's been interesting to observe, especially in the United States, is that this is the beginning of our holiday season. And so this is where, okay, we're dealing with like diminishing light, but we have to find the light within our hearts. And the idea behind the holidays, which gets lost in kind of like, the gift giving and all that, which I'm not knocking. In fact, I'm affirming a different sense of it. The best sense of it is that we're tapped into our charitable giving rather than just a tit for tat. Well, Susie gave me something last year, so I have to kind of give her something that matches what she gave me, which is not the spirit of Sagittarius. The spirit of Sagittarius as a sign of Jupiter is how we are able to kind of give our best selves and give the best of ourselves.
Wow.
And to expand and grow, which is the idea of a fire sign, which is Sag, ruled by Jupiter, is the idea of creative expression, self-expression, in order to kind of broaden one's horizons and to kind of let more of yourself out.
And I think this is a good segue into looking at the solstice. You mentioned the holidays that come up at around this time. So I'm going to pull up a little something that I was working on. Mm-hmm. And it's looking at these cycles of yin and yang. Mm-hmm. And basically, for the past 5 or 6 years, I've been running a program called the Kamaria Circle, which is, Kamaria is a word that means like the moon. And we always work on the yin side of the year. So this idea of how do we work with the solstice energies, how do we work with this period of darkness, really comes out of a philosophy of understanding yin and yang. So I thought I'd break that down a little bit for everybody.
My sister, break it down for us.
So this Taiji symbol, or also known as the yin and yang symbol, shows these two energetic forces that, are equal and opposite. They're in complete balance. They constitute a wholeness. And the light side of the circle represents the yang. And those are it's like the energy of upward expansion. And it's the solar energy. And the dark side of the circle is the yin, or the lunar side of the circle. And this alternation of yin and yang is what gives us the seasons, is what gives us the differentiation between day and night. So if we think about the yang, what the yang is associated with is, action and expansion, things that are bright and vibrant. In the psyche, the yang part of the psyche is the part of ourselves that is oriented towards the spirit, the non-physical. It is logic and awareness, because the yang is going to reveal things. So it's like our consciousness, the things that we are aware of and conscious of, and it's our intentions. So when we talk about, I'm going to set an intention or an affirmation to do something, and I know what I want, that is the yang. We're using the yang part of our psyche. When we come to the opposite side, we're looking at the yin. And the yin, instead of being expansive and revealed and vibrant, we're coming into the darkness. We're coming into contracted solidity, contracted form. Things are moving slowly. And in our psyche, that relates to the wisdom of our experience. It's the subconscious mind, and it's the things that we don't know. It's the feeling, it's the body's way of communicating with us. And it's how things come into form. And I often say that when we look at like sciences like The Secret and all of these things that are very much about like set your intention, all of those are very yang oriented systems where it's prioritizing the mind over matter. But we have another half of the equation, which is really honoring the yin and honoring the subconscious, honoring the archetypes, honoring the parts of ourselves that are motive forces that we may not even be aware of. So it's like the difference between saying, okay, I'm going to, get up and go to the gym every day. And we set that intention and we're like, I'm ready, I've got my alarm. And then we wake up in the morning and our body's like, nah, son, we're staying in bed. And that's the yin, that's the body, that's the part of ourselves that can trump our conscious intentions. And so when we think about this Taiji symbol as a clock and this alternating between yin and yang, we're also looking at an alternation between different parts of our psyche and how we can work with them. And what's really beautiful as we move around this clock of the Taiji symbol is that when we come down to the water element, this is where we are right now. And so, of course, we have the equinoxes, which symbolize equal day and night, sunrise and sunset at the same relative time. And then once we pass the autumn equinox, we're coming into these longer nights. The growing darkness, the growing yin. The yin makes us say, okay, it's 22 degrees outside, and so I'm going to stay home instead of going out. Makes us a little more internal and reflective, maybe even a little sleepier. And so as we come to the solstice, we have that turning point where the yin, the longest night, then the next day, the days start getting longer and longer and the nights shorter and shorter. And you can see that represented in this cycle. And so what we're really looking at with this soulful solstice is how do we take advantage of this growing yin before it turns, before the light starts to return? How do we value this part of our psyche and get to know it so that when the solstice comes, our conscious and our subconscious have a window of communication with one another? And it's a powerful time for setting our vision and listening to our calling and our destiny for the upcoming year. One thing that I'll say about yin and yang is that in the ideal world, in nature, yin and yang are perfectly balanced. But in our society, because there is a prevalence and a prioritization of the yang, what it looks like is that we value the masculine over the feminine, aka patriarchy. It expands into, light is good, dark is bad. If you're in New York, it's like, road rage, like everything, move fast, don't, be walking and wandering and looking around. we prioritize the youth and things of the earlier parts of lives versus aging being demonized. And, you know, it goes on, but one of the aspects of being in a yang dominated society is that we fear the darkness, we fear the chaos, or we fear not knowing. You know, it's like how we give people esteem is how smart or intelligent they are, but that intelligence is based on how much we know and how much we can prove, versus having an honoring of this part of ourselves that doesn't know consciously, because when we don't know consciously, it allows space for other types of wisdom, our intuition, our gut, our coincidence and synchronicity, and other ways for other forms of intelligence to communicate with us, whether that's ancestors, guardian angels, even our dreams. And that's what we're going to be looking at this cycle, is how do we tap in to that part of ourself that is not knowing but ultimately knows. It's coming full circle as it relates to the solstice and the return of the night. It's, though my soul may set in darkness, it will rise in perfect light. I have loved the stars too fondly to be fearful of the night, which really speaks to this holiday season and the light that comes in the darkness. You know, it's that wisdom from within. You know, when I see the Christmas lights and the candles, and, you know, there's so many sacred traditions and holidays that around this time that all are dealing with this light. You know, all of the holidays around this time are looking at light. And like you said, with Sagittarius, the light of the heart, but this real inward trajectory of coming out of what I know from collecting facts and data and moving into what I can know from a different source, and how I can understand the world, not just from what I can collect externally, my logic, my reason, my facts, my information, but really how that is integrated into a wholeness that is a wisdom and my gut reaction and my experiential understanding of the world, which I think speaks to a little bit of the Sagittarius Gemini polarity.
No, it speaks a lot to it. I mean, that's pretty much it, in the sense that they're very similar. Jupiter, through the prism of Sagittarius, is attempting to see the bigger, broader picture, whereas Gemini is also attempting to look at information and the more intimate picture, in that sense. When I say intimate, closer, small talk, let's say, and whereas, you know, Jupiter might use, like in Sagittarius, the bigger words, the bigger concepts, philosophy. Both are looking at knowledge, and both are looking at how we understand things. The problem, as you said so aptly, both can confuse intelligence and information as the most valuable rather than the heart, right? Like, you know, like, I'm witty, Gemini, or I'm funny, Sag.
Hey.
You know, for those who are more Christian oriented or, you know, steeped in the Bible, one particular image that I think about a lot with Sagittarius is the movement from Leo. We're talking about fire signs. There's Aries, but I'm focusing on the movement between Leo and Sagittarius. Okay. And I'm focusing on the movement from Solomon the king, right, Leo, to Solomon, who became the author of Ecclesiastes, right, who is more so the wise teacher. And I think that really is Sagittarius. So if you read Proverbs and Ecclesiastes,
sage archetype,
the sage, right? It's kind of going from being the king to like being the sage.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so that's kind of one thing I think about a lot, because you know, Solomon never stopped being king until he died, but he did go through a significant fall as king, right? He lost himself. He lost his way.
And that metaphor too, I think, of being led from the ego versus being led and evolving into being led from another source of truth.
Right, which is the heart.
Which is the heart. I think that is such a great segue into what we're going to be up to with this cycle of new manifestations, because it really is about how do we, we could associate the ego with the yang and this idea of what do I know, right? And so, what we're going to be thinking about or not thinking about, what we're going to be up to is how do I get out of the not knowing as I'm beginning to wind down from 2019 and plant the seeds for 2020. How do I do this in a way that honors that I don't know everything that is in store for my life? And so that's where we come to the sacred source flower essence that we're going to be working with this cycle. And that flower essence is really about turning off or turning down the volume of the logical mind and turning up the volume of the heart, turning up the volume of that inner wisdom, helping us to trust our intuition a bit more, helping us to find the breadcrumbs of synchronicity and to really pay attention to those messages and those truths that are coming from a place that's beyond our own knowing. And it's also a flower essence that we use at this time of year because it helps us to, I say it helps us to be instead of to do. So it helps us to get a little quieter. It helps us to allow ourselves the space to, if it means setting up a meditation practice or just sleeping more because there's more darkness. So it's totally okay, y'all, to get those extra naps in. But it's a flower essence that awakens that. So this is the flower essence. Mm-hmm. And then we also have these flower essence infused. I know there's a lot going on with infused goodies, but these flower essence infused chocolates that literally, when you take one, it's just kind of like, I think I'll just lay here and do nothing. And that do nothing is something, again, when we value the yang, the idea of doing nothing, it's lazy, but to welcome the value of doing nothing and just being present in our inner worlds, and being able to be slow enough to hear ourselves. And then I have a project that we do every year at this time of year, and I brought it as like a little show and tell, which is something I call, which is making a prayer board. And a prayer board, we'll be working with that this cycle because a prayer board is very different from a vision board. A vision board you make with your conscious mind when you have a clear vision of what it is that you want. You're like, I want that car, I want that trip, I want that job, I want that husband, I want that wife. It's clear. A prayer board is when you're leaving space for what you don't know to come into your life.
What do you mean? Like when you say you're leaving space, like you had very concrete things there.
Well, yes and no. Because when you're making a prayer board, it's very symbolic. It's almost like looking into someone's dream.
Okay.
Don't necessarily know how.
Okay, so like, okay, let's go up to the top. You say it is written, chapter 1.
Yes.
So that suggests maybe like something that you're going to be writing or some other project. Is that? So it's like it can be symbolic. It may not be like, oh, book or yes, book title. Is that what you mean?
Also, yeah, like so even having here the maktub, it is written. Am I pronouncing that right?
I would say maktub, but yeah.
Maktub, yeah. It is written. It's like the chapter 1 was relating to the book, but it was also a metaphor because I felt like I was starting a new chapter in my being.
Oh, okay.
So it's a twofer. And then, I love this picture here. I was really drawn.
I saw that.
And so then when I picked this up to show it for today, I was like, oh, like this was planting the seed for even what we're doing now, the new manifestations. But the thing is, I didn't know that I was going to be doing new manifestations when I started working on this board. I didn't know that writing a book was going to be so prevalent in my life. So that's the leaving space. So we're learning in this weeks leading up to the solstice, what am I drawn to? What am I called to? What images speak to me? What affirmations are showing up for me that I don't know why they might be relevant, but I'm going to trust that. And I'm going to create a dreamscape based on those images that is going to unfold over the year to come.
I mean, I think you just gave me a key to something I've been contemplating for the week. So every day I have a journal and I make entries, and I also, write and talk about some inspiration. Like I've been drawing inspiration from this book, Spiritual Gems of Islam. So can you read the title, or if I put back or whatever? It's by Imam Jamal Rahman. And so I read like a bit of a chapter of that book and then kind of write on it, and then I do my intentions. And what's been interesting reviewing my intentions from day to day is like what gets done, what doesn't. And thinking about like, well, why didn't I do this? Or why didn't it happen? And so it's become like an entry, like, well, why am I not doing these particular things? And I think it's because like what you're talking about, the yin and the yang, I think it's more so I'm not really in touch with the yin side, and I'm just driven by this yang, and this yang is kind of like, let's do this. And maybe it's the ego, like this will happen, blah, 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 rather when, the yin is like, I'm not concerned about that. I don't care about that. Or one of the problems I've saw with the law of attraction is that you had a whole bunch of people kind of drawing on the yang side about the things that they wanted. But I'm like, have you ever done the work internally to see if that's something you really want? Like,
or that that's part of your destiny,
right?
Or that serves the world,
correct?
Right? So here we have that, like, it's the big picture, and the biggest picture of our lives doesn't come from here. The biggest picture of our lives comes from the heart when it's connected to something bigger than ourselves.
Ooh, say that again, sis. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, the bigger picture does not come from here.
Yeah,
we think it does, right? And that I'm gonna remember that, and I'm going to forget it because we all have.
Yes.
Maybe this is the season to remember that it doesn't really come from here.
Yeah, that where does truth come from? Right. And the other practice that we're really going to be working with this cycle is dreams. And the way that I was trained in dream work is that you don't have a dream and then like look up the symbol and then say, okay, this dream was about that. Or you have a dream about a person and it's like, oh, that person is out to get me. No, it's thinking about our dreams as a glimpse into a big picture that is spoken in a symbolic language. And everyone's dreams speak differently. So this cycle, we're really going to be looking at the imagery in our dreams, cultivating a relationship, dream journaling, and learning how our specific dreams speak to us. There's a process called finding a solution dream. How do I take a problem or an aspect of my life that I've been wrestling with mentally and get information and insight from another place, a big picture, a more creative intelligence than what my mind is capable of. And so we're going to be doing that practice of dream work throughout this cycle of new manifestations as well, so that by the time the solstice comes, and I know we talked a little bit about how the sun is going to move in to Capricorn before the next cycle of new manifestations.
That's correct.
Before that consciousness, before that awareness starts to rise and the sun and the days get longer, where we can really set our intentions and our New Year's resolutions and all the things that we see for ourselves and are aware of, we're spending this delicious time in the yin and in the unknown to really tap into not what do I want for my life, but what does my life want for me, and doing some of that pre-work before we get into with Capricorn.
Right. I like get into the get to. Capricorn,
because Capricorn is going to be like, all right.
It's a cardinal sign, so it's a response to Sag. So just to kind of give everyone some sense of that movement. So Scorpio is a moment of like dealing with emotional truth, right? And kind of like going from Libra balancing out, like thinking about it, where now it crystallizes in terms of something that's real within the soul. Whereas like Sag kind of looks at that, dips it and like sets it on fire and then shoots it into the sky, right? And then like they kind of give out and like blaze in the sky, and then it comes down. Capricorn catches it as a diamond, right? Because it's an earth sign, so it's kind of crystallized in form. And then of course Aquarius comes along, like, let's give it to the people. And Capricorn's like, what are you doing? But it's more so like dispensing with it and kind of spreading it.
How we're moving with that through the flower essences is that, we did exhale to excavate and release and really get into the essential core and the truth of who we are and what we feel and, our essential nature. now coming into Sag, we're coming into the sacred source, really getting clear on what it is that we're going to set on fire. And then we're going to slingshot that into abundance with Capricorn. And how do we like catch that flame, crystallize it, make some money? And then in Aquarius, we're going to take a stand of how does that diamond belong to everyone? Mm-hmm. And where are the ways that we use our privilege or not on behalf of the humanity? So the order window is open for the cycle of new manifestations. And again, our goal is to carry you through the solstice season into abundance in the new year. And then let's get this social world together, because it's calling for ourselves, calling for our heart. So you can come to the website, you can choose whichever subscription package fits your needs for right now. And Sam, how can folks reach you if they want to set up a deeper astrological?
They can go to my website, unlockastrology.com, or they can email me directly at unlockastrology@gmail.com. Dope.
And you can find us both. We'll be posting these videos on IGTV, so you can find me at Oceans and Rivers, Magic and Medicine, and SF Reynolds.
On Instagram and Twitter.
On IG and Twitter. So that's all, folks. Wishing you a wonderful solstice season. Wishing you a wonderful soulful solstice. We'll see you when Capricorn comes into our psyche. All right.
Thank you.